Did you know that Britain has amassed nearly 3 times more Formula One silverware than its nearest rival, and that 10 different British Formula One drivers have taken 15 World Championships? Today, Britain is an undisputed motorsport superpower, but it hasn't always been this way. Motorsport in Britain had a rather difficult birth. Actually, it's a wonder that Britain has any motor racing heritage when you look back at all the red tape, political obstacles and the general disinterest in motor cars. With a blanket ban on road racing and very strict speed limits, it basically killed off British motorsport and also the fledgling car industry. So a bunch of influential and wealthy aristocrats set out trying to see if they could find a legal loophole, see if they could find out a way in which they could bring motorsport to the UK. Bexhill-on-Sea became the official birthplace of British motor racing when in May 1902, the 8th Earl de la Warr, who was an aristocratic car nut and chairman of the Dunlop Tyre Company, hosted a drag race along the private cycle path that he had built here along Bexhill seafront. You see, private land was exempt from Britain's draconian speed limits. Thousands of people flocked to see Britain's very first automobile race. The cafes, the hotels, the restaurants, they were absolutely rammed. The air was thick with steam, the smell of paraffin, and the noise and rumble of the cars tearing up and down the seafront was something that people had never experienced before. What's more amazing is that 200 cars took place at a time when there was only a couple of thousand cars in Britain in total. Now, in the early 1900s, the French dominated motorsport. Over half the cars taking place in that first race were French, and predictably, a Frenchman set the fastest time of the day. Monsieur Léon Serpollet, in his steam-powered Easter egg, took it to a heady 54 miles per hour. Well, that might not sound like a lot, but that's still 4.5 times faster than a furiously ridden horse. Inspired by the Bexhill races in 1902, another wealthy aristocrat, a Sir Harry Preston, thought that he would bring motorsport to here, Brighton, just 30 miles up the coast. In fact, Sir Harry even managed to convince the local council to build a purpose-built 2-kilometre racetrack here on Madeira Drive, out of a brand new pioneering material called tarmac. In fact, this was the world's first ever use of tarmac.
The very first Brighton Speed Trials ran in July 1905 and attracted over 400 entries, and amazingly it's an event that still runs to this day, making it the oldest running motorsport event in the world. The Morgan three-wheeler was the obvious choice for the Brighton Speed Trials. Firstly, the Morgan Motor Company is the world's oldest privately owned motorcar manufacturer, and its founder, HFS Morgan, actually opened his first garage in the same year as the first Brighton Speed Trials. But the main reason was because in 1924, Morgan actually held the record for the fastest standing quarter mile along Brighton's seafront.
A GN Norris did it in 16.4 seconds, which I'm told, on a wet, greasy day like today, is a pretty respectable time for a novice in the handicap class like we are. So there we are, that's the target, a 90-year-old record. How hard can it be?
The first run start was, well, pretty dreadful to be honest. Wheel spinning and fishtailing for the first 200 yards and then bogging down on the rev limiter before the first gear change. Nevertheless, it was still an amazing experience to be part of such an historic and important British motorsport spectacle. My time? Well, 16.64 seconds, which was actually 0.6 slower than what GN Norris had done 90 years earlier. the afternoon, the track was slowly drying out, and I was determined not to fluff the upshifts in front of the gathered crowds on this final run. This was it. Surely the Vettel 2.1 litre modern mod could compensate for my limited driving skills to trounce that pre-war record. About to do my real run this time now. I've had one practice, and in the handicap class I only get one crack at it. So the target is 16.4. I'm getting a little bit nervous now, a little bit anxious, but I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. The start was much better, but again that low revving V-twin caught me out and momentarily bogged down, but once underway the Morgan pulled like a train, topping out at an identical 93.2 miles per hour, but covering the quarter mile in 16.23 seconds to pip that 90-year-old Morgan track record by just 0.7 of a second. Of course I was pleased, but I think my overriding impression from the outing at the Brighton Speed Trial was just one of sheer admiration for people like GN Norris that had managed to get such speeds out of those pre-war machines.
In Britain today, there are 30,000 people with MSA race licenses. There are around 40,000 jobs created in motorsport, and it has an annual turnover of about £9 billion. This is a nation which is at the top of its game, but it also has a sense of humour and creates things like the Morgan three-wheeler. I don't think there are any other countries that do it as well as we. In Britain, the love of cars has never been stronger.